Hi, everyone. It's Pastor Sandy Adams here at Clarksburg Community Church, and we certainly have been reminded so many times of how the pandemic has affected our lives and how it's disrupted so much in our life, and certainly the church is no different. Back in May, we were supposed to have had, or I should say the beginning part of May, we were supposed to have had an event that we affectionately called Walk-On. And Walk-On was to honor these two fine people here to my left, and it was going to honor Tom Wallace and Charlyn Connor, therefore Walk-On. Pretty clever, huh? And we were going to honor these two folks for their many years of service in the music ministry of our church, because they are going to be stepping down from leading some key music ministries of our church. And we are going to have Walk-On at some time in the future. Don't know when that is, but we are going to have that. But until then, I thought that we could have Tom and Charlyn on stage here today or on the chancel and just talking about music and let them share about their lives and what music has meant to them here at Clarksburg. So, Charlyn, we're going to start with you, and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about your family, where you're from, and what brought you to Clarksburg.
Yes, well, I grew up mostly in California, and when I was 10 years old, my father moved our family to Santa Rosa. And from there, I went to UC Davis to college, and I kind of wanted to marry a farmer because our family had moved a lot. So guess what? I married a farmer. And so he brought me to Clarksburg. His family's been here for many generations. Right away, the same year, Gregory and Patty Merwin were married. So we were in college. I was in college, and when we were juniors, Graham and I married, and so did Patty and Gregory. And Patty and I commuted from Clarksburg to UC Davis. So she invited me to come to church here. Graham's family was not attending church here. And she knew I liked music. And so here was Gregory playing the organ. So before long, I was in the choir. And Graham was reticent for a while, but then he decided he wanted to find out what I was doing at the church, so he came. And so that's the beginning. Well, the Merwins were instrumental in bringing us to church, but also bringing us into the music program. I had no qualifications for being in the music program other than playing the piano for 3 years as a child and liking choir and singing.
Okay, so it all started with a friendship,
yes.
Really, and marriage, bringing here in friendship. Yeah. And here's just something I want to add to Graham's story and connection. Graham and I were talking one time about where I'm from in my hometown of Ashland, Kentucky, and one of his earliest ancestors is the founder of my hometown of Ashland, Kentucky. And I found that just amazing. You know, Robert Pogue was the founder of my hometown in Ashland, Kentucky, and it was actually called Pogue's Landing for a while, and Graham is a direct descendant of him, and I just thought that was crazy.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, thanks, Charlyn. Thanks for sharing that. And Tom, tell us about you, about what brought you here, because you're not from California.
No, I'm not. I'm from originally New Jersey, Bergen County, New Jersey. I was born in Hackensack, and it's a bedroom community of New York City. And I went to Georgia Tech, and I eventually came out here after I got a master's degree. Actually, got a bachelor's degree and was up in Marysville with what's now Caltrans. And I saw the future was not too great with just a bachelor's degree, and what I was doing could be done by anybody. And so I went back to school, got a master's from Georgia Tech, and came out here. And got married and so forth. But we finally found Clarksburg, and it was amazing. The real estate guy. I went into a real. I'm not being very good here, but I went out to get a loaf of bread at what was then Shays Market near the airport on Freeport Boulevard, and I said to him, we were living in a duplex there in South Sacramento, and I said, is it possible to buy a house with no money? And we talked a while, and finally he said, you got a few minutes? And I forgot all about getting the bread and the milk, and he drove us down to Clarksburg, and we turned up off the levee onto North Center Street, and it was just like I came home to New Jersey. It was the same kind of neighborhood. In other words, not the 6-foot-high board fences which you see in Sacramento, but a property where everybody knew each other and
Right.
so forth.
So when you were in at Georgia Tech, that's where you met Nell, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
And she's from Georgia.
She's from South Georgia, yeah.
Okay.
Moultrie, Georgia, and she went to nursing school in Atlanta.
Okay, so both of you moved a long way from home.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And you've been here a number of years.
This was 1964
Okay.
when we bought
Okay.
a little house at the north end of
Okay.
North Center Street.
Okay, and how long did it take you guys to start attending Clarksburg, the church?
Shortly thereafter, I think it was Isabel Wilson or maybe Marge Herringer came to see us, or maybe both of them, and convinced us to come here. And the strange thing was that Dennis Merwin, Gregory's brother, we got to know them very well, and he was the choir director here. And for 2 years, he tried to get me to join the choir, and I resisted. I'd never sung before. And finally, I decided in 1966, I decided I would join the choir at Dennis's urging. And I found out he'd resigned and had gone to a Fruit Ridge Christian Church in Sacramento to a paid position. So there I was in the choir, and no Dennis.
Oh, okay. So you were part of the choir for a number of years, and
Yes.
And then, for those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why we're honoring Tom and Charlyn, we'll talk about Charlyn, her leadership here in a few minutes, but you started leading the choir. And so when did you start leading the choir here at Clarksburg?
Yeah, that was 1995. We'd had a series of temporary directors, paid directors, who were mostly students from musical schools. And some of them had never even been to church. But the last one was Randall Muck. And he resigned in the spring of 1995. And the choir convinced me to take it. I figured I could do as good a job as those guys, even though I'd never directed before.
Well, and you've done an outstanding job, and that's a long time to lead a choir,
Yep.
and that's a long time to do anything in a church. And Charlyn, you when you started coming here and being part of the church's ministry, you then took on some responsibility in the music ministry. What was your first responsibility?
Well, Tom mentioned that Dennis Merwin resigned and went to Fruit Ridge Christian. And so his cousin, Doris Reeves, took the leadership of the choir. She had been singing in the choir. And she said, well, I'll only do it if you, Charlyn, will lead the children's choir, which she had been leading. And I said, well, I have no experience. She said, you can do it. And being the dutiful person I've always been, well, okay, I'll try. So I did that, and that's how I got started with the children. And then Doris left because they quit farming. Her husband quit farming here, and they moved. And so I had the temerity to take on the chancel choir. For a year, I tried to do both, and that was too much.
Okay, so you led the chancel choir for
Yes, she did.
I think I either didn't know that or I forgot that. So
Yeah,
okay,
and I can't remember now. I didn't look it up. So how many years I did that? Maybe 5. I don't know. And so then, at least by 1980, I was still leading the chancel choir. I know that.
okay. So where in your story did we incorporate the Handbell ministry? And because that is also one of the ministries you led for a long period of time. When did that happen?
Okay, that happened. It began in 1980. Dennis Merwin, even though he was at a different church, invited me to go with him to a Choral Conductors Guild workshop in Berkeley. And so we went, and there were always good training sessions and so forth, which was very beneficial to someone who never directed anything through education, only through experience. So the youth choir at the First Congregational Church in Berkeley had been invited to entertain us at lunch, the youth handbell choir. And it was my first time to hear handbells. Okay. And the Lord just put that on my heart. I just felt this passion to hear that and do that. I never was thinking about directing at that time. But anyway, the director said, well, the first thing you do, because I spoke with him, is you join the American Guild of English Handbell Ringers. And then they hold all kinds of training experiences. So I did that, and I came back to the church and said, I really would like to have handbells here, and the Merwins and the council all supported that. Gregory was giving me money that he made, or giving a fund money that he made playing the organ for weddings, and so anyway, that's how we got started, and we ordered the bells in 1982, and they arrived in November. This was 3 octaves of Schulmich bells.
And I can't claim to have a lot of knowledge of handbells and so forth, but what I do know, that's no small investment in purchasing that. That's a lot. But also when you do your practices, when you're building a team, and that is a commitment. It's not just like with the choir. It's not just, we get together every so often.
Right.
There's a schedule. You have practices and regular practices. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about you two is that for the number of years that you've participated and led the various music ministries that you have been involved in, there's a regularity to that, where for the choir, Wednesday night was practice.
That's right.
Where Tuesday mornings, at least since I've been here, Tuesday mornings was handbell practice. And that we're going to do this. And that by and large, the people involved in your ministries, they know that this is a priority. And I think that's a key lesson, I think, for people to know today.
And if I might say that handbells are it's such a fragile organization, because if one person is missing, you know it. I mean, you could
can't
not
play the music.
You can't play the music. If somebody misses vocal choir, there's a lot of people singing the same part usually.
And I know that while some things have stayed the same, I'm sure that there have been changes and differences, especially when it involves people. You've had a number of people over the years, probably have had the same people for a long time, but then you're adding new voices, new players, and so, or ringers, I should say, and which has its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
But what's exciting to see is the role that every ministry plays in a church. And while we may say, well, people come to church for this reason or for that reason, music does play a part. And music, there's so many expressions of music, so many different ways of doing music, but music does encourage. But what's neat to see, what I hear from you two, it's not just the music itself, it's the relationships that have been formed through music, through ministry. You came to church because someone asked you to, and you joined the choir because somebody asked you to. And so just listening to you, I've heard you mention so many people's names, and that I know have meant a lot to you. And I know that you wouldn't be here perhaps or have been leading had someone not invested in you. And I know that you've invested your time and your lives and your talent in other people. And I know the church appreciates that. And we look forward to the time when we can celebrate that. We look forward to the time when we can be together again. And we had kind of a plan of what was going to happen the last few months with ringers and the choir. But we're going to have walk-on, okay? And we're going to have time, and we don't know what everything's going to look like and when. And guys, as we continue to say, we're working on that. But what we do know is, even though you guys are stepping down from these leadership positions, Lord willing, you're not going anywhere, and you're here and being a part of the church and continuing to be an example, continue to be an encouragement to the next generation of leadership, just like that previous generation invested in you. And that really is what a lot of this is about. That's really what we're recognizing and what we're celebrating here. And I'm so thankful for you guys and the time that I've had, even though I've been here a short time, be able to see you in your leadership, even though it was a short amount of time. And the church has been blessed by it and will continue to be blessed. So I appreciate you guys so much. Closing words, anything that you might want to say to everybody out there during this time of sheltering in place, and hopefully that we're coming to the latter end of that. Maybe it's loosening up a little bit, but some folks may be a little discouraged. They may be a little wound up at home. Any final words you might want to say to encourage folks today, Charlyn?
Well, what I learned in my leadership in the music ministry that was the most valuable to me was that the outcome was in God's hands, not my hands. And so often I had expectations that were not met, and yet it was the relationships and the trusting God through the process that made it a gift to those who were participating and hearing. So I would say, give all your anxiety to God, learn how to do that, and let the outcome be in His hands, and you will have such joy and peace.
Thank you so much. Tom?
Well, it's all about people, and the relationships we have in our choir are wonderful. And it's a whole new world to me that gradually unfolded. These hugely talented composers and arrangers that produce anthem music for four-part harmony usually are so great that that's what we're missing. We're seeing a lot of praise song music now, and I'm getting a new appreciation for that. But I can't wait to get back to singing my choir again. And I think Charlyn and I are both going to be singing, even though we're not directing. So we look forward to when we can do that.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I miss too. I love music. I'm not a musician. I know it a little, but I know what I like. I know what sounds good. And the thing is, there is no particular style that's more godly or more holy. I believe that God is pleased when people worship Him in spirit and truth with the gifts and talents and expressions. And certainly when we hear our choir sing, the Handbell sing, the youth choir sing, and whatever expressions, I know that not only is the talent coming out, but the joyful expressions, the commitment to excellence, which I appreciate about you two, and doing our best. And I look forward to that. And as we move on to a new group of leaders here, it's just going to continue to get better, whatever form and everything that takes. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you sharing. And if you guys have an opportunity, if you want to give them just your appreciation, and I'm sure they'd appreciate a call, email, letter, card, anything like that. But or drive by the house and say hi, I guess, and that'd probably be good as well. But we'll let you know when WalkOn is scheduled once again. And again, thank you guys so much for being here, and God bless you guys, and look forward to seeing you soon.